On September 3, 2024, a Toyota Camry limped into my shop, running so poorly the driver thought the transmission was failing. The engine stumbled at every stoplight. Acceleration felt like the car was drowning. The check engine light had been on for weeks. Another shop had already quoted $1,400 for a new throttle body, spark plugs, and a fuel system cleaning. I did not replace a single part. I did not even use a tool. I grabbed a $6 bottle of cleaner, sprayed one sensor for 20 seconds, and the engine immediately roared back to life. Smooth, idle, crisp throttle response, power restored. That moment is why this video exists. Because there is one sensor on your engine that almost nobody cleans, and when it gets dirty, it silently destroys performance, fuel economy, and eventually the engine itself. Today, I am revealing which sensor this is, why it fails so quietly, and how cleaning it in under 5 minutes can save you thousands of dollars in unnecessary repairs. I have been working on cars for over 2 decades, and I can tell you without hesitation that this single sensor causes more misdiagnosed problems than any other component in modern engines. Once you understand what it does and why it matters, you will never ignore it again. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: your engine is not failing, it is being lied to. And that lie is costing you money every single day. Modern engines are not like the carbureted monsters of the past. They do not guess how much fuel to inject. They calculate it precisely based on sensor data. The engine control unit needs to know exactly how much air is entering the engine so it can match it with the perfect amount of fuel. Too much fuel and you waste gas, foul spark plugs, and destroy your catalytic converter. Too little fuel and the engine runs lean, overheats, and burns valves. The balance is everything. And there is one sensor responsible for measuring that incoming air flow. It sits between your air filter and your throttle body, quietly counting every molecule of oxygen entering your engine. When it works correctly, combustion is perfect. When it gets dirty, everything falls apart. That sensor is called the mass airflow sensor, and it is the most neglected component on your entire car. Drivers change oil religiously. They rotate tires. They replace air filters. But almost nobody cleans the MAF sensor. And that is exactly why engines slowly lose power, fuel economy collapses, and warning lights appear for problems that do not actually exist. The mass airflow sensor does not fail suddenly. It degrades so slowly that most drivers never notice until the damage is already done. The engine feels a little weaker. Fuel economy drops by a mile or 2 per gallon. Throttle response becomes slightly delayed. Each symptom is subtle enough to ignore. But over months and years, those small losses compound into catastrophic problems. Here is what most people never realize. When the mass airflow sensor gets dirty, it underreports the amount of air entering the engine. The engine control unit thinks less air is coming in than actually is. So what does it do? It cuts fuel delivery to match the false reading. Now your engine is running lean. Combustion temperatures spike. The catalytic converter overheats as it tries to process excess oxygen. Carbon builds up on intake valves. Spark plugs struggle to ignite a weak mixture, and the entire time, the computer is making decisions based on a lie. This is why cleaning the mass airflow sensor is not optional maintenance. It is critical prevention. I have seen this exact scenario hundreds of times. A driver walks in complaining about rough idle hesitation or poor fuel economy. They have already replaced spark plugs, changed the air filter, and tried fuel additives. Nothing worked. The shop ran diagnostics and found borderline readings on multiple sensors. So they start replacing parts, the throttle body, oxygen sensors, and fuel injectors. Each repair costs hundreds of dollars and only improves the symptoms slightly. But the real problem, the dirty mass airflow sensor, never gets addressed. Because it never gets fixed, the engine keeps compensating, the engine control unit keeps adjusting, and the driver keeps spending money. That is where this video changes everything. Once you understand how the mass airflow sensor works, why it gets dirty, and how to clean it properly, you stop being a victim. You stop guessing. You stop wasting money on parts you do not need. You take control of your car before it takes control of your wallet. By the time most drivers reach this point, they already feel two emotions at once: relief because they realize the solution is simple, and anger because they realize how many people knew about this problem and said nothing. Let me show you exactly what happens inside that sensor and why almost nobody tells you to clean it. The mass airflow sensor is a small device with a delicate wire or film element suspended inside a tube. As air rushes past that element, it cools the element down. The sensor measures how much electrical current is needed to keep the element at a constant temperature. More airflow means more cooling, which means more current is required. That current measurement is converted into an airflow value and sent to the ECU. The entire process happens thousands of times per second with incredible precision. When the sensor is clean, the readings are accurate. When it gets dirty, everything breaks down. Here is the problem. That sensing element is incredibly fragile. It is designed to detect the slightest change in airflow, but it is also exposed to everything that passes through your air filter: dust particles, oil vapor from the crankcase ventilation system, fuel vapors, and microscopic debris. Even the best air filters cannot stop everything. Over time, a thin film of contamination builds up on the sensing element. That film insulates the element from the airflow. The sensor has to work harder to detect the same amount of air. The readings start drifting lower, and the engine control unit, trusting those readings completely, begins cutting fuel delivery. At first, the changes are so small that nobody notices. The engine still runs. Power feels normal. Fuel economy drops by half a mile per gallon. Most drivers blame it on traffic or winter fuel blends, but the contamination keeps building. The mass airflow sensor keeps underreporting, and the engine control unit keeps leaning out the fuel mixture. Eventually, the symptoms become impossible to ignore. The engine hesitates during acceleration. Idle becomes rough. The check engine light comes on with codes for running lean or misfires. By that point, the engine has been running incorrectly for months, maybe years. Carbon has built up, spark plugs are fouled, the catalytic converter is stressed, and drivers are told they need hundreds or thousands of dollars in repairs. But here is the truth shops do not always share. Cleaning the mass airflow sensor fixes the root cause instantly. No parts needed, no labor hours. Just a $6 can of mass airflow sensor cleaner and 60 seconds of your time. The results are not subtle. The moment you start the engine after cleaning, the difference is obvious. Idle smooths out. Throttle response sharpens. Power returns. And if you check fuel economy over the next few tanks, you will see it climb back to where it used to be. I have watched drivers stare at their cars in disbelief because a problem they were told would cost $1,000 to fix disappeared with a $6 spray can. This is why the mass airflow sensor is the most important sensor almost nobody cleans. It controls everything: fuel delivery, ignition timing, idle speed, throttle response. When it lies, the entire engine operates incorrectly. And when it is cleaned, balance is restored instantly. But here is where it gets uncomfortable. Most repair shops know this, dealerships know this. But cleaning a mass airflow sensor does not generate revenue. It does not justify diagnostic fees. It does not sell parts. A 5-minute fix that costs $6 does not fit into a business model built around replacing components. So it gets skipped. Diagnostics point towards symptoms instead of the cause, and drivers pay for repairs that never address the actual problem. I am not saying mechanics are dishonest. I am saying the system rewards expensive fixes over simple ones. And the person who suffers is you. That is why this knowledge matters. Once you know how to diagnose and clean the mass airflow sensor yourself, you stop being dependent on someone else's incentives. You stop authorizing repairs out of fear. You start asking the right questions. And you save real money. Now that you understand what the mass airflow sensor does and why it fails, the next step is recognizing the symptoms before they become expensive. Because a dirty mass airflow sensor does not announce itself with a dramatic failure. It whispers. And if you know what to listen for, you can catch it early. The first symptom most drivers notice is hesitation during acceleration. You press the gas pedal, and the engine pauses for a split second before responding. It feels like the car is thinking instead of reacting. That hesitation is the engine control unit trying to compensate for incorrect airflow data. It is adding fuel, pulling timing, and adjusting throttle position all at once. The result is a delay that feels like lag. Most drivers assume it is normal aging. It is not. It is the mass airflow sensor lying about how much air is entering the engine. The second symptom is rough idle. The engine shakes slightly at stoplights. The RPM fluctuates up and down. Sometimes it feels like the car might stall. This happens because the engine control unit is constantly adjusting fuel delivery based on false airflow readings. It adds fuel, then cuts fuel, then adds it again. The engine never settles into a stable idle because the data it is receiving keeps changing. Drivers blame spark plugs or fuel injectors, but the real problem is upstream. The mass airflow sensor is feeding bad information, and the engine is reacting to it. The third symptom is poor fuel economy. You notice you are filling up more often. Your miles per gallon drop by 10, 15, even 20%. But the car still runs, so you assume it is just getting older. That assumption costs you hundreds of dollars per year in wasted fuel. A dirty mass airflow sensor forces the engine control unit to run rich or lean depending on driving conditions. Either way, combustion efficiency collapses. You burn more fuel to achieve the same performance. And because the degradation happens slowly, most drivers never connect the dots between a dirty sensor and rising fuel costs. The fourth symptom is the check engine light. Codes appear for running lean, running rich, or random misfires. Shops scan the codes, see multiple systems affected, and start replacing parts. Oxygen sensors get swapped. Fuel injectors get cleaned. Ignition coils get tested. Each repair costs money and temporarily improves symptoms. But because the mass airflow sensor is still dirty, the problems come back. This is the cycle that traps drivers in endless repairs. They fix symptoms without ever addressing the cause. Here is the part that shocks most people. All of those symptoms can disappear in under 5 minutes by cleaning one sensor. No special tools, no technical knowledge, just a can of mass airflow sensor cleaner and the willingness to try. The process is so simple it feels wrong that more people do not do it. But that simplicity is exactly why it works. You are not guessing, and you are not chasing codes. You are directly addressing the root cause of a dozen different problems. Let me walk you through the process step by step. First, locate the mass airflow sensor, often called the MAF sensor. It sits between the air filter box and the throttle body. On most cars, it is a small rectangular housing clipped into the intake tube. Some sensors have electrical connectors on the side. Others have the wiring integrated into the housing. Once you find it, disconnect the electrical connector. Then remove the sensor from the intake tube. Most are held in place by 2 screws or clips. No special tools are needed, just a screwdriver or your hands. Now look inside the sensor housing. You will see a small wire or a thin film element suspended in the airflow path. That is the sensing element. Do not touch it. Do not blow on it. Do not wipe it with anything. It is incredibly delicate. Any physical contact can damage it permanently. This is where the mass airflow sensor cleaner comes in. Buy a can specifically labeled for mass airflow sensors. Do not use carburetor cleaner. Do not use brake cleaner. Do not use throttle body cleaner. Those products leave residues that make the problem worse. Mass airflow sensor cleaner is formulated to evaporate completely without leaving any film behind. Hold the mass airflow sensor so the element is facing up. Spray short bursts of cleaner onto the element from about 6 inches away. Let the cleaner flow over the element and drip out the bottom. Do not soak it. Do not flood it. Just spray enough to wash away the contamination. You will see the cleaner drip out dirty. That is the oil, dust, and carbon that has been lying to your engine control unit for months. After a few sprays, let the sensor air dry for 2 minutes. The cleaner evaporates fast. Once it is completely dry, reinstall the sensor, reconnect the electrical connector, and start the engine. The difference is immediate. The idle smooths out within seconds. Throttle response sharpens. The engine feels more willing, more alive. That is not a placebo. That is your engine control unit finally receiving accurate airflow data and adjusting fuel delivery correctly. If you drive the car for a few miles, you will notice even more improvements. Acceleration becomes crisp. Power delivery feels linear, and if the check engine light was on for lean or rich conditions, it will likely turn off after a few drive cycles once the engine control unit confirms the readings are stable. But here is the critical part most people miss. Cleaning the mass airflow sensor is not a one-time fix. It is ongoing maintenance. The contamination that caused the problem in the first place is still present in your intake system. Oil vapor from the PCV system, dust that slips past the air filter, fuel vapors from the tank. All of it will accumulate on the sensor again. The difference is now you know how to prevent it from becoming a problem. Clean the mass airflow sensor every 15,000 to 20,000 miles. Clean more often if you drive in dusty conditions or if you have an aftermarket air filter. Regular cleaning keeps the sensor accurate, which keeps the engine control unit happy, which keeps your engine running perfectly. And here is the part that saves the most money. Once the mass airflow sensor is clean, other problems stop hiding. If you still have a rough idle after cleaning the sensor, you know it is not airflow related. The issue might be spark plugs, ignition coils, or vacuum leaks. If fuel economy does not improve, the problem might be downstream, such as oxygen sensors, fuel injectors, or exhaust restrictions. Cleaning the mass airflow sensor eliminates the most common variable. It removes ambiguity. That clarity is worth more than any diagnostic fee. This is also why so many drivers think their car is broken when it is actually just confused. The mass airflow sensor feeds bad data, the engine control unit compensates incorrectly, and multiple systems behave strangely. Suddenly it looks like the entire engine is failing, but it is not failing. It is adapting to false information. The moment you clean the sensor, the false information disappears. The engine control unit stops compensating, and the engine returns to normal. That is not luck. That is understanding how modern cars actually work. What makes this uncomfortable for the industry is how little it costs. A $6 can of cleaner solves problems that shops diagnose as needing $500, $1,000, even $2,000 in repairs. Throttle bodies are replaced, fuel systems get cleaned, sensors get swapped, all because nobody checked the one component that controls everything. I am not saying every problem is a dirty mass airflow sensor. Real failures exist. But in my experience, at least 30% of drivability issues trace back to airflow sensor contamination, and that percentage is higher on cars with over 60,000 miles. So before you authorize a repair, before you replace parts, before you assume your engine is dying, clean the mass airflow sensor. It takes 5 minutes. It costs less than a cheap oil change, and it reveals the truth. If the problem disappears, you just saved hundreds or thousands of dollars. If the problem remains, you have lost nothing except a few minutes, and you have gained clarity. That is how professionals diagnose. They eliminate variables, they test assumptions, and they confirm problems before spending money. Now you have the knowledge to do the same. The mass airflow sensor is not a mystery. It is a precision instrument that gets dirty. When it is clean, your engine runs perfectly. When it is contaminated, everything suffers. Power drops, fuel economy collapses, warning lights appear, and drivers spend money fixing symptoms that never address the cause. But you are different now. You understand what the sensor does, why it fails, and how to maintain it. That knowledge is the difference between being a victim of your car and being in control of it. If this changed how you think about engine performance, hit like so more drivers see it. Subscribe if you want weekly fixes that save money instead of costing you money. If you have ever cleaned your MAF sensor and watched your car come back to life, drop that story in the comments. Those stories matter because the most expensive repair is the one you did not need. And now you know how to avoid it.